All right, today we're diving into one of modern philosophy's biggest, most mind-bending unsolved puzzles. It comes from the work of philosopher Derek Parfit, and it boils down to this. How can you possibly harm someone if your action is the very reason they exist in the first place? Okay, let's start with a little thought experiment to get our heads around this. I want you to imagine your life, but what if you were born 150 years ago? Say, in Victorian London. You'd have totally different parents, grow up in a completely different world. Would that person still be you? And here's the surprising answer. No, not at all. That person wouldn't be you. See, each of us is the unique product of a specific sperm and egg at a specific moment in time. If your parents had conceived you just a few seconds earlier or later, a genetically different person would have been born. The person who is you would have just never existed. Now, this core idea actually has a name. It's called the time dependence claim. It sounds fancy, but it's just a simple, powerful fact. Our existence is radically fragile. It depends on the exact moment of our conception. Now, keep this idea in your back pocket because it's the key to this whole puzzle. Okay, so let's see how this one little idea creates a huge ethical headache. We're going to look at a classic example that Parfit used involving two mothers. On the surface, their choices seem pretty much the same, but as you'll see, they're worlds apart. So, look at the two cases side by side. Mother number one, she harms a child who already exists. That's pretty straightforward, right? She makes that specific child worse off. But mother number two, her choice isn't about harming an existing child. Her choice is about which child to create in the first place. That's the crucial difference. Now, our gut feeling or intuition, it just screams that both of these mothers did something wrong. I mean, deliberately bringing a child into the world with a disability feels unethical. But, and this is a big but, when we apply that time dependence claim to the second mother, things get really, really strange. This is the absolute heart of the problem. If you ask the child in that second scenario, what would he say? He'd probably say something like this. From his point of view, his mother's choice wasn't a harm. It was the very act that gave him life. His options were either exist with a disability or don't exist at all. And given that choice, he's glad to be alive. So this leads us to the central mystery. If the one person who seems to be the victim doesn't feel wronged, in fact, if he's grateful for the decision, then who got hurt? Where's the harm? Can you have a wrongdoing with no victim? Derek Parfit laid this out as a full-blown paradox. He said most of us hold three very basic beliefs about what makes an act wrong. But in the case of the second mother, these three ideas completely crash into each other. You logically cannot believe all three of them at the same time. Something has to give. And here's the linchpin. That child wasn't made worse off. Why? Because his alternative wasn't being born healthy. His alternative was nothing, non-existence. And as long as his life is worth living at all, he is definitely better off existing than non-existing. And listen, before you write this off as just some abstract thought experiment, you should know that this exact problem pops up in some of the most intense and important ethical debates we're having right now. You see it in debates about genetic selection and IVF, where parents might choose an embryo with a specific trait. You see it in conversations about teenage pregnancy, where policies can influence when someone is born. And maybe the biggest one of all is environmental policy, where the choices we make today will absolutely determine which people are born hundreds of years from now. Okay, so let's scale this up. Let's go from one mother's choice to a massive decision for all of society. A choice where the future of humanity is literally on the line. Imagine we have to choose between two policies. First, there's conservation. It keeps our quality of life pretty normal and makes sure future generations have it great. Then there's depletion. It gives us, the current generation, a slightly better life, but it leaves people in the future with a much lower quality of life, though importantly, their lives are still worth living. You can see the trade-off pretty clearly. Depletion gives us this tiny little bump right now in exchange for this huge long-term drop for everyone who comes after us. The choice seems obvious, doesn't it? I mean, conservation, right? It would seem incredibly selfish and just plain wrong to pick depletion, to burden all those future people just for a tiny benefit for ourselves. But you know there's a twist coming. Here's the catch. It's the same one as before. A policy decision this big changes everything. It changes who meets who has kids, when they have them. After a couple hundred years, the people who are alive under the depletion policy are a completely different group of people than the ones who would have been alive under conservation. So, let's just walk through the logic. Our generation is a little better off with depletion. The future people, even with their lower quality of life, are still glad they exist because the alternative for them was not existing at all. So get this, no single person is actually harmed by this choice. And this leads to a conclusion that just breaks your brain. Not only is no one harmed by choosing depletion, you could argue that every single person who ever lives is made better off by it. Our generation gets a small benefit, and future generations get the gift of existence. How wild is that? So, where does that leave us? Our intuition is practically screaming that choosing depletion is a terrible, immoral decision. But our standard moral toolkit, the one that focuses on not making people worse off, seems to lead us to the exact opposite conclusion. Parfit himself never claimed to have the answer. He thought this whole problem pointed to a massive hole in our current ethical theories. He spent a huge part of his career searching for what he called Theory X, some new moral principle that we just haven't discovered yet, one that could solve this puzzle without causing even more problems. And that's the question we're left with. It's a question that forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about harm, about right and wrong, and what we owe to the people who will come after us. It's a deep, unresolved puzzle that just hangs there, asking, how can a choice that makes every single person better off still be the wrong one?